أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. Surah al-Burūj, Surah number 85. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والسماء ذات البروج واليوم الموعود وشاهد ومشهود قتل أصحاب الأخدود. By the sky with its houses, by the promised day, by the witness and the witnessed, perish the men of the ditch, the fire abounding in fuel, above which they sat as they were themselves witnesses to what they did to the faithful. This surah talks about a very horrendous scene of torture and killing which had happened long before the Prophet, peace be on him. However, most probably well known to the people of Mecca. That's why it has been mentioned as an example. It is guessed that the surah was revealed when the people of Mecca themselves were being tortured very severely by the kuffar, and this surah somehow tries to alleviate and give them some sort of moral support, that if you are being tortured, if you are being killed in this way, you have to know that in the past also people, because of their faith, have been tortured and killed, and it is not the case that this is going neglected. Allah is witnessing, and nothing would go neglected and unnoticed. And when we come to verse number 8, it says, وَمَا نَقَمُوا مِنْهُمْ إِلَّا أَن يُؤْمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ الْعَزِيزِ الْحَمِيدِ. They were vindictive towards them only because they had faith in Allah. So, because the people of Mecca also had faith in Allah, and for that faith they were being tortured, the surah is giving them a sort of past example of the same sort of troubles and inflictions. Therefore, the surah should have been revealed around year 4, 5 of Ba'sa, because we know that until the year 3, the Prophet, peace be on him, had not openly invited people, and therefore there was not that sort of troubles and tortures and contentions. Year 4 or year 5, when the open da'wah started and people started to believe in the Prophet in open, then all these tortures and killings started. So, roughly the surah should be around the year 4 or at the latest year 5 after the verse. وَالسَّمَاءِ ذَاتِ الْبُرُوج. Buruj is the plural of Burj. Burj is anything which is clearly seen. Something which could be visible very clearly is called a Burj, and that's why a castle is called a Burj, also used in the Quran as well. أينما تكونوا in Surah Nisa, أينما تكونوا يدرككم الموت ولو كنتم في بروج مشيدة. Even if you are in well-fortified castles, you will meet your death. Also in Surah Ahzab, we have about the wives of the Prophet, وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ وَلَا تَبَرَّجْنَ تَبَرُّجَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ الْأُولَى. Stay in your homes and do not show off your beauty the way in Jahiliyyah al-Ula women used to show their beauties. So that tabarrajna, which is from Burj again, baraja or tabarraja, has the same meaning. Of course, qarna fi buyutakunna, stay at your homes, about the words of the Prophet. we shouldn't discuss it here, but since it has come up, it meant do not somehow come out of your homes to take part in politics, because wives of the Prophet were not all the time in their homes. They used to go out for their business, they used to go to Hajj, and no one, of course, mentioned this verse that you have to stay at your homes. And some jurists have actually generalized this verse, not only to say that the wives of the Prophet had to always stay at home, also to generalize it to other women as well, other ladies, other than wives of the Prophet, saying that a woman should always stay at home. While even about the wives of the Prophet, this was not the case, because as I said, no one told them that you shouldn't go to Hajj or you shouldn't go and visit your families or friends. The only instance where this verse وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ was actually brought as a witness against the wife of the Prophet was when Aisha took part in the Battle of Jamal. Many companions of the Prophet mentioned the verse, saying that you are doing the wrong thing according to the Quran. Salama told her, Ibn Abbas told her, and others to whom she had written to help her in Jamal, they had written that you are doing against the verse, because the verse says you should not come out of your house. And that means everyone had this understanding that it means that you should not take part in politics. And this makes sense, certainly, because the wives of the Prophet were very prominently respected personalities in Muslim community, and ban on taking participation in politics for them would have made sense, because people would have not probably sided with them because of their views or the ideas, political ideas that they had put forward, but because they were wives of the Prophet. So there was a sort of bias there. Allah wanted to stop that bias in politics. Probably, this is what we can understand from the verse. Anyhow, that's a side issue. The verse mentions وَلَا تَبَرَّجْنَ تَبَرُّجَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ الْأُولَى, which means showing up your beauty, showing your beauty. And here, of course, Burūj had been used in the same sense. Something which is seen very clearly, and according to many grammarians, and also according to traditions from our Imam alayhi salam, Burūj here means the stars. وَالسَّمَاءِ ذَاتِ الْبُرُوجِ, I swear by the sky and the stars which are in it. Here, of course, in this translation we have houses, which alludes to constellations of stars in the sky. Also, constellations of stars in the sky are called Burūj as well. However, this is not something which is originally used as in etymology. It's an astronomical sort of invention, and many exegetes have taken Burūj to be those constellations like Orion and Leo and Scorpius and such constellations which we know in the sky. Some exegetes have criticized that view, saying that these astronomical constellations are a product of human perception rather than astronomical reality, and therefore it would not be proper for the Quran to swear by this type of perception of human which we have from the sky, from the stars. Therefore, the best interpretation would be by the sky with its stars, which has stars in it, very clearly seen stars. وَالْيَوْمِ الْمَوْعُودِ, by the promised day. We will discuss later on why these sets of swears have been mentioned here. وَشَاهِدٍ وَمَشْهُودٍ, by the witness and the witness. قُتِلَ أَصْحَابُ الْأُخْدُودِ, curse on the men of the ditch. Men of the ditch, we have three different stories about men of the ditch, who are meant by men of the ditch. Ukhdud, khad or ukhdud is a ditch, the plural of it is ahadid, and the ditch was, as is explained here, an-nar, a huge fire. The ditch was full of fire, and therefore it could have been said that the ditch was fire itself, with lots of abounding fuels as woods and logs and other things which was put in it. So a sea of fire was made in the ditch, and that is why it was something which people would never have forgotten, and the people who did it were called Ashab al-Ukhdud, people of the ditch. Now, three stories are mentioned about Ashab al-Ukhdud, and after we mention that, then we come to the propriety of these qasams, which are mentioned in swearings, which are mentioned before Ashab al-Ukhdud. The first story is mentioned in Tafsir al-Qummi. Only three stories are mentioned by Shias and by Sunnis as well. The first story is mentioned in Tafsir al-Qummi, which says someone, a Yemeni king called Zu-Nawas. He was very famous, of course. In Arab history, he was very famous as well. He created a very powerful state in Yemen, Zu-Nawas, and he converted to Judaism. So he became a Jew, and he called himself Yusuf. And he forced everyone in that area to convert to Judaism. The only people who rejected to convert to Judaism were a group of Christians in Najran. Of course, Najran sounds familiar for us because later on, at the time of the Prophet, a group from Najran, a delegation from Najran came to the Prophet to listen and then to argue with him about Christianity. Waqtu Najran, and we have this Surah al-Mubahala, Ayat al-Mubahala, about the incident between the Waqtu Najran, delegation from Najran, and the Prophet, peace be upon him. So, they long had been Christians. At the time of this Zu-Nawas, they had trouble with Zu-Nawas trying to convert them back to Judaism. So they rejected, and Zu-Nawas moved to Najran with his army and asked them that either you have to convert to Judaism from Christianity, or I will put all of you in fire and burn you alive. And of course they were very firm believers in Christianity, and of course that was before Islam, and Christianity was the rightful religion or the last religion of God. And these people rejected all of them, and all of them were burnt alive in this very huge ditch that Zu-Nawas ordered to be made. And probably later on, of course, when Zu-Nawas, of course, later on people, the Abyssinian king attacked Zu-Nawas and again restored Christianity to Najran. This is one story. The other story is mentioned in Majma' al-Bayan and also in Ad-Durr al-Mansur by As-Suyuti. The story goes as when Persia was conquered by Muslim army. The second caliph wanted to know whether they are regarded as Ahlul Kitab or not as Ahlul Kitab. And he consulted different people, and they said, no, they are Majus, and Majus are not from Ahlul Kitab because they believe in things which are not recorded in any religion, and that is marrying with their daughters and marrying with their sisters. And Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam told them that no, the Majus are from Ahlul Kitab, and initially they did not believe in such things. This was not part of their religion, to marry with their sisters or with their daughters. There was a king in Persia. This is what Amir al-Mu'minin mentioned as an evidence that they were Ahlul Kitab previously, and they are regarded as Ahlul Kitab. So that's why nowadays, of course, we regard Zoroastrians to be Ahlul Kitab as well. There was a king in the area that one night he drank abundantly, and he became drunk, and he slept with his daughter or his sister. This is, of course, the Rawi has hesitation, with his daughter or his sister. And tomorrow, when he came back to his mind, he regretted, and he said, what have I done? This is wrong. What should we do now? Everyone, of course, everyone in the court knew what had happened. And the daughter or the sister told him that the only thing is that you make this one of the lawful things in our religion. And he tried to do this. The people opposed him. And after the opposition grew, he said, anyone not following this code, this rule, I will burn them. And many people were burnt because of their disagreement with this very, of course, bad innovation which was brought to the religion of Zoroaster. The third story which is mentioned in Tafsir al-Ayyashi and also in Ad-Durr al-Mansur again is that in Abyssinia the king wanted to convert to Judaism and wanted people to convert to Judaism, and they resisted, and the same story happened. Now, it might have been the case that all these stories were true, and when Quran refers to Ashab al-Ukhdud, he refers to all these. However, usually the Quran should refer to something which is known to be, especially in this very, very crucial instance in the history of Islam, when Muslims were tortured very badly and severely, and they were killed due to those tortures. And Allah wants to give them an example that have patience, and look at other people in the past who had patience. This incident should have been something well known for Arabs of Mecca, those who converted to Islam especially. And apparently the one mentioned about Zoroastrians in Iran was something which was not known to anyone, and that's why the hadith says Amirul Mu'minin only told them that this is the case. And also in Abyssinia, what was known by everyone was what happened in Yemen, because they had very long-standing relations with Yemen. They traveled every year to Yemen in their winter business trip, and they knew the Yemen history very well. And that's why we would say that it is safe to decide that the story refers to these people in Yemen, the people of Najran, who were killed because they did not accept to convert to Judaism after they had become Christians. Now, these qutala ashabul ukhdud, qutala here means lu'ana. Because when Allah says qutala, in this sense, they should all be killed. But qutala means lu'ana, means their souls to be killed, so that they would not realize anything anymore of faith. They could not come close to God anymore because of what they did. So we can translate this as curse be on ashabul ukhdud. Now, if we go back to these swears or qasams, وَالسَّمَاءِ ذَاتِ الْبُرُوجِ, I swear by the sky with the clear, brilliant stars which are watching everything as a witness. Or some exegetes say that these people, when they were killed, they were just looking for help from God. Of course, the help did not come in this world. Allah says, we have reserved the help for them in the other world. But because they were looking at the sky, it doesn't make much sense. These stars which we witness, which we can see every night, they have witnessed everything on this earth from the beginning of the creation of man up till now. They have been good witnesses for everything which has happened on this earth. Or metaphorically we can say that they have been witnesses. So, وَالسَّمَاءَ ذَاتِ الْبُرُوجِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْمَوْعُودِ, I swear by the promised day. Because I have promised that on that day, every zalim and every mazloom will come together, and the mazloom would claim a compensation for the wrongdoing that has been made against them, that has been inflicted on them. And I swear by that day, this is true, it will come. One day, Ashabul Ukhdud and those who were killed by them, they come together, and as Amirul Mu'minin alayhi salam says in hadith, يَوْمُ الْمَظْلُومِ عَلَى الظَّالِمِ أَشَدُّ مِنْ يَوْمِ الظَّالِمِ عَلَى الْمَظْلُومِ. The day when Mazloom is claiming compensation, that's the day of judgment, from Zalim, is much harsher, much severe than the day when Zalim wronged them. Of course here, this was very severe. Burning people alive, it was this Yawmul Zalim, this was Yawmul Zalim ala al-Mazloom, the day when Zalim had power over Mazloom, when wrongdoer had power over those who he wronged. However, when the Yawmul Maw'ud comes, that is Yawmul Mazloom ala al-Zalim. That is the day of those who have been wronged and oppressed over the oppressors. That is harsher, that punishment, that severity, enormity of the occasion would be much worse than what you witnessed in that ditch, over that ditch. وَشَاهِدٍ وَمَشْهُودٍ. Not only by the promised day, not only by the stars which had witnessed everything, and they will retell their story they tales one day, and I swear by the witness and the witness. وَشَاهِدٍ وَمَشْهُودٍ. Now, the exegesis here about Shahid and Mashhud have put forward many different views, which some of them are not very clearly linked to the story. For example, just one example, some exegetes say Shahid is Yawmul Jum'ah, Mashhud is Yawmul Arafah, because of some hadith which Prophet has mentioned in some other occasions about Arafah being Yawmul Mashhud, and Jum'ah being Yawmul Shahid, and Yawmul Shahid. They have linked it to this, which is of course not linkable. It's completely irrelevant to bring those type of traditions to tafsir of this verse. Two things could be said about this. One is that Shahid were those who were sitting on the ditch and witnessing. Shahidin, that means they were human beings. They had conscience. They had the same feelings than those who were put in the ditch. Still they did it. I swear by that Shahid. And I swear by that Mashhud, those who were seen being put in the fire. They were human beings as well. They were same beings. And still they did it to them. And I swear by this, that means that one day I'm going to question and to compensate or take compensation from those who did it. The other is that in many verses in the Quran we have that every prophet is a shahid over their nations. So, the Prophet, peace be on him, is a shahid over his own nation. Jesus was a shahid or a witness over his own nation. فَكَيْفَ إِذَا جِئْنَا مِنْ كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ بِشَهِيدٍ in Surah An-Nisa وَجِئْنَا بِكَ عَلَى هَؤُلَاءِ شَهِيدًا. When, on the day of judgment, we bring one shaheed or shahid, the same meaning, one witness from every nation, that means their prophet, and you will be the witness over this ummah. And then, when you come there, you produce your witness. You were a witness over the ummah. And that would mean an extraordinary type of power given to the Prophet so that he could witness whatever was in the heart of the people, whatever was in the mind and in practice of the people during so long as the nation lived. And there are many verses in the Quran talking about وَجِيءَ بِالنَّبِيِّينَ وَالشُّهَدَاء. Nabiyyin will come, shuhada. Of course, shuhada is here those prophets, messengers who were shahid over those nabiyyin and other members of the nation, and they will produce their witness. So here again, shahid and wa mashhud used in nakara sense means that a shahid, which was Jesus Christ, witnessing over them, and mashhud, those people who were real, sincere, faithful people who were put in fire because of their faith. And after all this swearing, I say, I swear by the sky and the stars, I swear by the promised day, I swear by the witness and those who were witness, that curse be on Ashab al-Ukhdud. This is very, very severe. Much more severe than the punishment of being burned alive in the fire. This curse is, of course, one day these people would have loved to be burned 100,000 times, but not to bear this curse from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. An-nar Dhat al-Waqud, that ditch which was full of fire and full of fuel, as it is all fuel and all fire, إِذْ هُمْ عَلَيْهَا قُعُودٌ, while they were sitting over the ditch. وَهُمْ عَلَى مَا يَفْعَلُونَ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ شُهُودٌ, and as they were themselves witnesses to what they did to the faithful. Certainly here, of course, there were some people who were just carrying out the orders. And if it was Dhu Nawas or someone like him, he was sitting and watching and enjoying what was happening. So here it refers to those people who were the rulers, the governors, who were sitting over there witnessing what was being done to those poor people. Because sometimes you order something. For example, you tell that burn all of them, and this is carried out in your absence. But sometimes those who order this type of severe punishment, if they witness, they order to stop it because they cannot bear this type of torture, this type of punishment being carried out on fellow human beings. Sometimes this is the case. And sometimes it is, of course, quite the opposite. They enjoy sitting and watching. And this is referring to that not only they had ordered these people to be burned, but they were sitting over there, they were watching that this was being carried out. This is even more. There is this story that when the captives of Karbala were brought to Yazid, he of course had ordered them to be captured and all these things, but seeing the severity of, the enormity of the humiliation which was put on the family of the Prophet, peace be on him, Yazid said, may God curse Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, Qabbahallah, something like that. Had I been there, I wouldn't have treated you like this. Although he had ordered it, but he said that I wouldn't have treated you like this, because this is really, really bad. This is not something that any Muslim should be treated like, let alone the family of the Prophet. Whether this story is true or not is another thing, but sometimes it's the case. People order something which, if they themselves witness, would be impressed by the enormity of the situation. However, here, وَهُمْ عَلَى مَا يَفْعَلُونَ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ شُهُودٌ, they were witnesses to what they did to the faithful. And why they did it? Had they killed anyone? Had they stolen anything? Had they done anything wrong? No, just because of their faith in God. وَمَا نَقَمُوا مِنْهُمْ إِلَّا أَن يُؤْمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ الْعَزِيزِ الْحَمِيدِ. They did not have any grudge against them, towards them, but due to the fact that they had faith in Allah Al-Aziz, the Almighty, Al-Hamid, the praise. Now, of course, bringing Al-Aziz Al-Hamid here is very meaningful, because it says Allah is very powerful. He could have stopped it. And they had believed in Allah Al-Aziz, and they might have probably felt that Allah should do something. Is He not the ultimate power in this world? Is He not the ultimate decider in this world? So if this is the case, does He not have good attributes that for which He is praised? Allah Al-Aziz Al-Hamid, for which He is praised. Is He not so merciful? Is He not so caring about His creation? So if He is powerful, if He is Hamid, if He is Aziz and Hamid, why isn't He doing anything? And this is exactly the type of feeling that people of Mecca had at that time. The Muslims of Mecca had at that time. That we are being tortured, we are being killed in this way. If this is true, if the Prophet is saying the truth, why nothing happens? Why nothing is done by Allah? And Allah says, of course, there is a Yawm al-Maw'ud, do not worry. And this comes, of course, later on as well, mentioned later on. So the only anger that they had against them was that they had faith in Allah, the Almighty, the Laudable, the Praised. وَمَا نَقَمُوا مِنْهُمْ إِلَّا أَن يُؤْمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ الْعَزِيزِ الْحَمِيدِ. And again, it reiterates that Allah could have stopped it. But this is not, of course, the way He has planned His creation. This is how we try you with each other, and how we try and test your patience, how we try and test your cruelty on the other side. الَّذِي لَهُ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. To whom belongs the kingdom of the heavens and the earth. So He is the ultimate king. He can do and stop this. However, Wallahu ala kulli shay'in shahid. This powerful king is witnessing now, is watching. This Azizul Hamid is watching. Wallahu ala kulli shay'in shahid. Now, if you somehow put yourself in the context of those Meccans who were torturing and who were tortured, and then you see the power of this literature coming to them, inspiring those who were tortured by patience and perseverance, and of course threatening those who were torturing by إِنَّ الَّذِينَ فَتَنُوا الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ ثُمَّ لَمْ يَتُوبُوا فَلَهُمْ عَذَابُ جَهَنَّمَ وَلَهُمْ عَذَابُ الْحَرِيقِ. Indeed, those who persecute the faithful men and women and then do not repent, for them there is the punishment of the hell, and for them there is the punishment of burning. The same thing which of course was happening here for mu'minin. Now this verse needs some more elaboration. We leave it for our next session, inshallah. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alayhi wa sallam.
Thank you indeed, Shaykh. Brothers and sisters, we've got some minutes for further discussion in the form of question and answer. So, any brothers or sisters who is here? Sisters,
Alaykum salam.
Can we have an explanation of what it actually means to, when it is said, witness over the people? What does it actually mean? To witness their community, to witness over them?
This witnessing is more than just seeing what is happening. Is witnessing even the inner motives, feelings, and all these things, because then on the Day of Judgment they want to somehow provide a witness for and against their nations. And therefore they have to know whatever happens. And this is some sort of grace of God to these people who have a sort of knowledge in this respect, which is of course drawn from the knowledge of God about seeing the inner motives and intentions of the people. And this is necessary also for the shafa'ah, because on that day they want to do shafa'ah. And shafa'ah cannot be done unless they are aware of the inner motives, intentions, drives of the people. And since we know that every prophet is the shafi of their own ummah, and of course the ultimate prophet, the shafi, is the prophet, peace be on him, therefore this type of knowledge is very, very crucial and important. And especially in the Shia faith, of course, this has been elaborated more in more details. That's how the prophet has this knowledge, and also then his heirs to this knowledge, the warathin, they have this sort of knowledge which they would produce as a witness on that day, so that the shafa'at could be performed.
I have another question. The death of the soul, which is the curse in verse 4.
Yes.
I think you said it means the death of the soul. The soul never dies.
No, death in the sense that because hayat or life of the soul is due to faith, due to connection and link to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If a soul completely loses this connection, is regarded as dead. Not dead in the sense that it does not exist. Regarded as dead in the sense that no faith would go to the heart anymore. And the heart is dead. The heart is complete. And this is what the Quran uses actually. That وَلَا يَسْتَوِ الْأَمْوَاتِ وَلَا الْأَحْيَاءِ. The living and the dead are not equal. The living are the example of the mu'minun, the dead are the example of kuffar. So the death of the soul is when the soul completely loses connection with faith and Allah.
Thank you.
Yes. First of all, a grammatical understanding, maybe I'm wrong, but when the word Qutila is used, how different is that from, say, another command like Tabbat Yada Abi, that is another curse, but the grammar seems to be a bit misleading, because when you give an order, it's the same exact construction of the sentence, is it not?
Yeah, but this type of formula is used for dua or for curse. For dua or for asking something. For example, we say Rahimallah. Rahimallah, of course, is in the past tense. However, it is used as a sort of insha of dua, something that we ask from Allah. May Allah have mercy, Rahimallah. And here, may them be killed. Qutila ashabul ukhdud. Although it's in the past tense, but however it means that may them be. And therefore it is used, usually the past tense in these formulae are used for curse or for dua, whether in mashhul or in ma'lum.
So when you say qutila, it doesn't mean may they be killed.
Yeah, may they be killed. And killing here is the killing of the soul rather than killing of the actual death of human beings. This is what is meant by it.
It's not a past tense to say they were killed.
They were killed. You see, it could be used in that sense as well, but it's the context which tells us, and that's why some people say Ashabul Ukhdud here are not meant those who killed the mu'minun. It refers to the mu'minun themselves. And Qutila Ashabul Ukhdud is just giving us an account of what happened, that Ashabul Ukhdud were killed. But usually this context would go more nicely with this being a curse and a dua rather than a sort of report from the past. It can mean both things, yes.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Thank you. The other item that you just touched on is the Zoroastrians. It's only because we have a Zoroastrian temple in Greenwich Lake that it is intriguing at the end of the day to find out what they descended from. Because, when I was growing up, I've heard all sorts of scare stories, like they leave their dead outside in the fields for the birds to come and pick on them or something. I don't know if that's got any authenticity. But they're supposed to recycle, because the animals come and eat them up, so that's recycling the body. Are they that bad? Could you tell me more about what Imam Ali said about their being from Ahlul
Kitab? Yes. They are regarded as Ahlul Kitab, and we have many Zoroastrians in Iran actually. They don't do this to their deceased, certainly. In India. Do they? In India. This might be something later developed in Indian parties. They are called parties, in Indian parties. Not certainly in Iranian Zoroastrians. They do not practice these things.
Yeah, this is what they do. They keep the dead body on a cliff, on a high place. And the Westerners come and destroy it.
That's out of their benevolence. Yeah. For all sorts of creatures.
That's right, yes. Yeah. Okay, sisters? No, Jed?
I can understand the second interpretation might not be appropriate because at the time of the Prophet, not many people have known about Iran. But Abyssinia obviously is the first Muslim chief might say. So one question is possible that it might apply just as much to Yemen. And secondly, in terms of both interpretations, is there any tradition that you can find non-Muslim, which is outside the Muslim tradition, perhaps to support one of the two?
I have not actually, I have not investigated whether there is non-Muslim accounts for any of these stories. However, regarding Abyssinia, it is possible. That's what many exegetists have said, that it is possible that it's referring to all these three incidents. There is no, of course, prevention of that. However, if we say that this surah was revealed in the 4th year when Muslims were being tortured, we know that this happened before they migrated to Abyssinia, and they didn't have much knowledge about Abyssinia, because when Prophet ordered them to migrate, he said that there is a king there who is very close in his faith to our faith, and you can go there and he will receive you well. And on the reliance on what the Prophet said, they migrated. Of course, they had some sort of friendship with Abyssinian king, as we know, Amr ibn As went after these migrants and wanted to somehow use his friendship with the king of Abyssinia to bring them back. So there were some relations. However, these verses were revealed long before they started to migrate to Abyssinia and see for themselves what sort of religion they had, what sort of people they were. So it goes better with the Yemen story rather than the Abyssinian story. What we can say, of course, that's a possibility as well.
Okay, any questions?
Coming back to the Prophet being witness, and you said that the Prophet will be witness to your inner thoughts as well. Supposing if there are inner thoughts, but they are not carried out. So for example, if someone has the thought that they want to steal someone or do harm to other people, but it's not carried out, will that be taken into account, or because there is no action?
No, it's not. It's not taken into account. We have in traditions very clearly mentioned, if you have a nice thought and you do not put it to practice, Allah will reward you for that. But if you have an evil thought and you do not put it in practice, Allah will not punish you for that. You know, you expect this from a Kareem, isn't it? I mean, because he's Kareem, he's so generous and dignified and honorable in his manners, so you expect this. Therefore, these things are not something which you would expect Allah would take into account, although it's witnessed by the Prophet. But this is not something which is taken into account.
Will the Prophet mention this at the time?
It's not like this of mentioning, because Allah knows it, certainly. I mean, above the Prophet or Allah who is witnessing everything, it's a sort of this process of Allah actually doing things through certain chains of means. And one of the means here are the Prophets, for both bringing this sort of knowledge there on the arena of the Yawm al-Qiyamah, and also for somehow compensating for some of the bad things which were there in terms of shafa'ah. Because if you had somehow followed and attached yourself to this Prophet, then some of the evil things will be washed away. And this is the meaning of shafa'ah. We may need one independent session to talk about this witnessing of the prophets, because this is a very deep type of concept mentioned in the Quran and in our tradition. Maybe in some other place, when we come to other surahs, inshallah, we will discuss this in more detail.
Any sisters? You're starting your discussion with women having permission or no permission to go out. How is that connected with Surah?
I did not start a discussion with that, but it came up as I was explaining the meaning of al-Burūj, and I said that there is another verse in Surah Al-Ahzab which uses the same term etymologically about the wives of the Prophet. وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتَكُنَّ وَلَا تَبَرَّجْنَ تَبَرُّجَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ الْأُولَى. Stay at your homes and do not show yourselves. Do not come out and show yourselves the way women used to do in Jahiliyyah al-Ula. And then I discussed about this qarna fi buyutakunna, just in passing. It was not something which was related very much.
And the other one is that the curse here, does it imply that the curse is worse than burning in the hellfire?
Of course it is, yeah. I mean, if you are burnt 1,000 times, it is much easier than being cursed by God. Because that means eternal destruction, curse. Curse means eternal, that means you have done something that Allah or the system would not allow you. When we say Allah, we just have to imagine the system He has created. Would not allow you to get close to God anymore. That is the curse. Curse is, they say curse, la'na means getting far from the mercy of God. And that's getting far from God Himself. And that means that you are in eternal destruction unless, again, something happens that you may be retrieved.
Any other last question? Thank you much indeed, Shaykh.